Hey guys, here we are for a short track guide in the Hyundai Elantra N at the Donington Grand Prix circuit. So for this track guide, I'm going to show you the hot lap in full speed, and then I'm going to analyze the lap in slow motion and point out a bunch of braking points, references, and just my overall approach to each corner. So before we get to the hot lap, I just want to show you the track settings that we're using. We're using an air temperature of 78 degrees, track temperature is 118 degrees, and the track usage is 40%. So without further ado, let's get on to the hot lap. So that was a 138.56 lap. Now I'm going to analyze the lap in slow motion. So as we're starting the lap here, we're on the right hand side of the track, bringing the car over to the left hand side of the track, getting across the finish line here, shifting up to fourth gear, and then going up to fifth right before we get to the braking zone. And we're going to be looking up ahead at like this blue cone as well as like this blue triangle. So right as the blue triangle ends, as we're getting past this blue cone and like that blue line, getting on the brakes right after that, right as we approach this dash line, around 60% brake pressure, and then starting to trail off down to third gear here and see trailing off as we get to the apex. And the important part here is you want to hit the blue and white curb, but if you get in the dirt, you're going to hit the curb as you come back on the track, and that's going to unsell the car and really hurt your exit. So do not turn in too early to get into that dirt, only try to get the blue and white curb. So we're back on throttle here, and as you get back on throttle, the car really just likes to understeer, so you gotta make sure that once you commit you're gonna make the corner. Letting off and having to get back on is really gonna hurt your exit, so make sure to focus on that for basically every corner around this track, that once you get on throttle you know you're gonna make the corner. So again, going down the hill here, holding the right hand side of the track, trying not to get into the grass but staying as close as you can, getting that curb there, and now turning in for this fast left-hander. And now the goal here is to have a straight braking line, or breaking a straight line for this medium speed right-hander. We're looking at that white board on the left-hand side, and we're braking like car length after it. So waiting and then getting on the brakes, kind of following, like you can see this white line. I'm kind of following that like on the track. Around 60% brake pressure, starting to trail off again, and then basically not getting on the throttle until late in the apex. So waiting, then partial throttle right about there. There really isn't too much runoff here, even though you can get a little bit into the dirt here. But once you do, your car kind of gets stuck. It's kind of hard. It's like a magnet kind of pulls it away, so it's hard to get back on. So just be cautious on how much exit you do take there. So as we're getting up the hill here, you can start by just holding a smooth line. You don't need to use all the curbing on early, but once you get over to the exit of the curb, you can start to get a nice turn in for this left-hander here, clipping the curb, and again focusing on a straight braking line as we get to that white box, kind of braking right at it, around 60% brake pressure, then starting to trail off. It's going to be a downshift to fourth, then a late downshift to third, and you're trying not to hug this as much as you can, more like just turning in late and clipping the curb right around there. So I feel like if you hug it, you kind of lose a little too much apex speed throughout, so staying a bit wider for most of the corner is beneficial. So as we're approaching this blind corner, it's really hard to find a braking zone, so I'm just going to pause it here and point out something in the grass that I'm using. So you can see that there's like a dark shade of green on the grass, and then it's like light over here, and then it's light, and then back to dark. So it's like this vertical streaks. But if you look ahead, there's like this horizontal dash of like light green. So I'm almost using that as my braking zone. It's almost like halfway up the hill here on the curb. But as I go in slow motion, you can see it right around there. And basically a car length after that, starting to get on the brakes. So that's a good reference point since there isn't really any 50 or 100 meter boards. Small tap on the brakes here, then turning in as early as you can, trying to get a lot of this dirt, but try not to get a 1x if you can. Then getting back on the throttle, the car's just going to understeer through here, but just trying to hold a tighter line. It's really easy to get way out wide here. I kind of feel like that loses you a tenth or two as you're approaching this long back straight. So going down the straight here, just really focusing on your braking zone and getting it over to the right hand side of the track. And you'll see that there's these boards over here. There's this first one, and then there's the second one. I'm braking like a car length or so after the second box there. So right as we get past it, around 60% brake pressure down to fourth gear, and then down to third, and then trailing off just as our turn-in starts, and it's really easy to understeer and then get into the sand here. It's really tight chicane, getting back on throttle, and yeah, really just committing through there. I'd say that's really important to be slow and fast out. That's really my approach through that section. So as we approach the next to last hairpin of this track, looking over to the left-hand side for our braking point, and again, there isn't really anything other than the curb, but I basically use like this box over by the fence is my reference. As that basically disappears from the dash, it's like looks like a spotter stand or something, or like a flagman stand. As that disappears, I get on the brakes. So I'm basically using that over there as my reference, way away from the curbing or the grass. So around 80% brake pressure, really easy to overshoot this hairpin. It's super important to just be tidy about it. Down to second gear, and then at apex, I believe it's actually first gear through here. So again, trying to just hold this curbing as tight as you can. Patient on the throttle, really easy to understeer at if you get on the throttle too early. So then accelerating out of the corner. Now we're up to second here. I believe you're in first at apex there. Climbing up the hill, and again for this final corner, even though it's a similar hairpin, it's really hard to see where the apex actually starts. So I'm basically using, you can see on this white line, there's a bit of blackness as a mark. So as soon as I kind of go over that blackness on the white line, getting on the brakes, around 70% brake pressure. Again, trailing off early, trying to hold a tight line as it's really flat, not much banking to support the car. And then it feels like the corner actually gets tighter in the middle of the apex, so putting in more wheel, real useful. Getting back on throttle around like the 3/4 point of the hairpin, and accelerating back out, unwinding the wheel, using all the curbing on exit, and that's a lap around Donington Park. So yeah, it's a really fun track, but a really challenging car to drive around. Really likes to understeer on throttle application, and if you overshoot a corner just by taking it too fast, it's really unforgiving. So hopefully that lap guide was helpful, and I'm just going to play the lap one more time full speed in chase view. Yeah, thanks for watching, guys. Hopefully this track guide was helpful, and see you next time.